All right, so we're going to talk about the seventh grade Unit 2A test review. And so we have some vocabulary words here that we need to talk about and match up. And the vocabulary words may or may not be exactly the same as you'll see them on the test, but more or less they should be close. So the first vocabulary word is variable, and that is, let's see here, a number represented by a letter which can change or vary. The next word is coefficient, and that is the number that is multiplied by the variable. And so we've talked about this. So the coefficient is the number that's in front of our variable, usually x. So in this example here, my coefficient would be 1 because there's a 1 times x is x. Over here, my coefficient would be 5 because it's 5 times x. So it's whatever number is in front of or being multiplied by my variable. And then the next vocabulary word is equation, and that is a number sentence that contains an equal sign. And then inverse. Inverse is the operations that undo each other. So like my inverse of multiplication is division. My inverse of addition is subtraction. And so we see here operations that undo each other or opposite operations. And then we have less than or greater than. We know what both of those are. And the meaning of the symbol, and we have this here, well, that's the less than symbol. So we have less than. I will warn you to pay attention to whatever vocabulary is on the test. So if it is different, you'll be able to still get the right answer. So read each question carefully. Always good advice. Number 6 says, which number line correctly represents the inequality? So I have x is greater than negative 25. So first thing I need to do is know, is this a open circle or a closed circle? And because it cannot be equal to, then it will not be a closed circle. So right away I can eliminate answer choices B and D, and that leaves me with A or C. And then I have an opportunity to use my test values and then use my substitution. So we'll pick a number on either side. I'll pick negative 50, and then over here I'll pick 0. Because anytime I can use 0, I like to use 0 because it's real easy. So then I have 0 is greater than negative 25, and I know that that's true because negative 25 is to the left of 0. So that is true. And then negative 50 is greater than negative 25. Well, that is not true because as my numbers move to the left on a number line, they decrease or they become less. So negative 50 is not greater than negative 25. So open circle, negative 25, shade to the right. So my correct answer choice would be A. Number 7. What equation is modeled below, and what is the value of x? So a two-part question. I need to know what the equation is, and then I need to solve it. So first off, I have 1, 2, 3 x's, and these are positive x's, so 3x, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives, and then here's my equal sign, and then how many positives do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll give me 16, 17, 18, 19, and so I have 3x minus 5 equals 19. So there's my equation. Now I need to know what the value of x is. So I need to solve. And so my goal is to solve. My method is to isolate my variable. So here next to my x's I have a negative 5. So I'll need to undo that with the inverse, which is positive 5. If I do it to the left, I do that to the right. 19 plus 5 is 24. And then that makes 0 pairs, and so then I only have my 3x on the left. So now I have 3, we know this is 3 times x, because that's my coefficient of 3, multiplication is implied there. So 3 times x, hey, my inverse of multiplication is division, so I need to divide by 3. If I do that on the left, I do that on the right. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is x equals 24 divided by 3 is 8, and there is my answer. Question number 8. What is the value of x? And so my value of x, I have 5x plus 25 equals 100, or negative, or no, let me start over. 5x plus 25 is greater than negative 100, and so I need to isolate my x, isolate my variable. So hanging out with my 5x's is a positive 25. I undo that by subtracting 25. I need to do that to both sides, make 0 pairs. So a negative 100 and a negative 25 is a negative 125. And then over here on my left I have 5x. So again, just like the last problem, this is 5 times x. I need to undo that multiplication by division, so I'm going to divide by 5. If I do it on the left, I have to do it on the right. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times x is x. And then 125 divided by 5 is 25. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. And there's my answer. And then the next one, number 9, says, which steps would you use to solve the equation below? And so we've talked about this a couple times in class now, and I told you that you will see it on the review, and here it is, and you will see it on the test. So x over 8 is the same as 1/8 x, or 1/8 times x, and then minus 2 equals negative 4. So my first step is I need to isolate my variable, and so I do that by adding 2 to both sides. And then once I've done that, I'm going to multiply by my reciprocal. And so normally we'd do this step by step, but I'm just kind of showing you all together what my steps would be. So step 1 was to add 2 to both sides. So add 2 to each side, okay. Add 2 to each side, okay. Subtract 2 from each side? No, we're not doing that, so that eliminates that. Multiply each side? Well, that's not my first step, so that eliminates that. And so already I've been able to eliminate 2 answer choices. So add 2 to each side, then divide by 8. Well, that's not what I did. I multiplied by 8 over 1, which is 8. And then so here, add 2 to each side and then multiply each side by 8. And that it looks exactly like what I did. So added 2 to each side. Then I multiplied by my reciprocal, which is 8 over 1, and 8 over 1 equals 8. So my correct answer choice would be B. Alright, so question 10 says, Mr. Dunnigan wrote the following equation on the whiteboard. And you'll need to let me know if he actually wrote it or not. So I'm not sure. But what is the value of x? So I have 25 equals negative 5x minus 5.5 or 5 5/10. And so first thing I need to do is clear off what is hanging out with my x, right? So I need to isolate my variable, and so I'm going to have to add 5.5 to each side. So 25 plus 5.5 will give me 30.5 equals negative 5x. And so at this point now, to isolate my single x, I have a negative 5x. I need to get just 1. I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And so 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times x is x. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. And then on the other side I have 30.5 divided by 5. And so we'll do that over here. So ice cream goes in the freezer. And then cone goes out on the counter. Find my decimal, put it on the roof, forget about it, right? Just ignore it. So then I have, how many times does 5 go into 3? 0. How many times does 5 go into 30? 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Bring down my 5. My times 5 go into 5. 1 times 5 is 5. And then I'm done, so then my answer would be 6 1/10. Question 11 is solve the inequality 28 is greater than 3x plus 4. So first step, just like all the other ones, would be to isolate my variable. So I need to get rid of my plus 4 with my inverse operation of subtraction, or adding a negative 4, however you want to look at that. 0 pairs. 28 minus 4 is 24. It's greater than 3x. And then, as we've done, we're going to divide. That's 3 times x. Inverse of that is division. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is x. 24 divided by 3 is 8. And so there's my answer. Next, hold on. There's a second part to this question. Which values are possible solutions to the inequality above? So now we're testing out these test values that they've given us to see if they're going to fit in our inequality. So if I have 8 is greater than 8, is that true? And no, it's not, because it cannot be equal to, so that doesn't work. 8 is greater than 8. Well, we already said that's not true. 8 is greater than 9, so that doesn't work. 8 is greater than 1, okay. 8 is greater than 2, okay. 8 is greater than 3, that's okay. So good so far, but just to be sure, 8 is greater than 10 or 11, no. So my correct answer would be C. Question 12. Which solution and number line represent the inequality below? So I will need to solve this. I know there's not space to solve it, so you could use your own paper or just get creative and use the margins. So negative 6x minus 3 less than or equal to negative 15. So at this point I need to isolate my variable. I have a negative 3, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. That gives me negative 6x less than or equal to negative 5 plus 3 gives me a negative 2. And then from here, I need to divide each side by a negative 6. So, divide each side by 6. And so 6 divided by 6 is 1. 1 times x is x. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. And then negative, or 2 divided by 6 is going to give me actually 1/3 negative. So I don't think my number lines match. So let me look at this for a second. And so I see my mistake. And so we've talked about this all year long, that we make mistakes. And so my mistake was copying down the problem wrong. So that should have been a 15 plus a negative 3, which would have given me a negative 12. And so now it will make sense. So if we get to something and we get an answer that doesn't make sense, not reasonable, then we need to look back at our problem. And so now I have 12 divided by 6 is 2. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. So negative x is less than or equal to negative 2. And so I cannot have a negative x. I need to flip it. And so if I flip my x, that's going to give me opposite of negative x is positive x. Flip my sign, and then my opposite of negative 2 is a positive 2. And then I have x is greater than or equal to 2. And so I know I'm going to have a closed circle, so I checked that. Okay, they all are closed, so I'm good so far. And then let me use some test values. So I'm going to use 0 as a test value, and I'll go ahead and use 4 as a test value. So 0 is greater than 2. Is that true? And no, 0 is not greater than 2. And then I have 4 is greater than 2, and that is true. So, but my graph doesn't shade that way, so that's not going to work. And then over here I have a negative 2. Well, that's not my answer. And then negative 2 again is not my answer. So then here I have closed circle at 2, shading to the right, which is what my test value said. So my answer is going to be D. Question 13. The model below represents the equation. What is the value of x? So again, I need to write out what I have. So this is going to give me 2x plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 equals, because we see that it's balanced and I have an equal sign, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 2x plus 10 is 14. Going to make my 0 pairs by taking away 10 from each side, and that will give me 2x equals 14 minus 10 is 4. Now I have 2 times x, so I need to divide. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times x is x. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then my answer would be D, 2. Question 14. When x equals 10, which inequality is true? And so from here, the idea is that I want to check my answer by plugging it in or substituting it into my equation to see which one is true, or we can solve all the equations and see, or solve all the inequalities and see which one is true, but I'm going to go ahead and just use my substitution method. So 60 minus 3 times 10, so that would be 60 minus 30 is greater than 40. And 60 minus 30 is 30. Is 30 greater than 40? No, that one doesn't work. 36 minus 3 times x, so 36 minus 30 is greater than or equal to 6. 36 minus 30 is 6, so that would be 6 is greater than or equal to 6. Well, it can be equal. 6 is equal to 6. So I think we're okay here, but let's keep going just to make sure. So 2 times x, so 2 times 10 is 20 minus 6 is greater than or equal to 22. 20 minus 6 is 14. Is 14 greater than 22? No, it is not. And then for the last one, 2x, or 2 times 10, which is 20, minus 3 is greater than or equal to 22. 20 times 3 is, 20 minus 3 is 17, is greater than 22. That is not true. So we've confirmed that B is our correct answer. And just so I'll work the top one out the same as I did the others, 60 minus 30 greater than or equal to 40. 60 minus 30 was 30, greater than or equal to 40, and we said that was not true. Number 15. What is the value of x? So, same as before, I need to isolate my variable. First step is I have a negative 22, so I need to add 22 to both sides. And so that'll clear that. And then 71 minus 22, because the signs are different, so I'm going to subtract. So that would become 11 minus 2 is 9. 6 minus 2 is 4. So 7 halves x, or 7 over 2 times x, equals 49, but negative 49. And then, because my ninjas, there's more ninjas, ninjas are going to win. Multiply by the reciprocal. So 2 times 7 is 14, 7 times 2 is 14, 14 divided by 14 is 1. 1 times x is x. So negative 49 times 2 is 2 times 9 is 18. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So that'll give me 98. I think I'm going to write my answer over here, or continue my solving over here. So x equals, and so we know that it was 98, but I have a negative times a positive. It's going to give me a negative. So x is negative 98 over 1 times 7, which is 7. And so that can be simplified, and so 98 divided by 7, ice cream in the freezer, cone on the outside, 7 goes into 9 one time, 1 times 7 is 7, it gives me 2, bring down my 8, 7 goes into 28 4 times, 4 times 7 is 28, and so my answer will be 14. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. So my total final answer for this one is going to be negative 14. Last question. Mr. E wrote the following inequality on the inside of his shoe. What is the value of x? And graph your answer on a number line. So here I need to clear off my 4. It's a positive 4, so I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. That gives me 0 pair. Bring down my negative 3/4 x. Inequality symbol. Negative 5 and negative 4 is negative 9. So now I need to multiply by my reciprocal, which will give me 4/3. And so 4 times 3 is 12, 3 times 4 is 12, 12 over 12 is 1, but I do have a negative, so a positive times a negative is a negative, so that will give me a negative x. 9 times 4 is 36, negative times a positive is a negative, 1 times 3 is 3, so I have a negative x is less than or equal to negative 36 over 3. I can simplify that, so that will give me 12. So negative x is less than or equal to negative 12. I do need to flip it because I cannot have a negative x, so that will leave me with x. Flip my sign. Opposite of negative 12 is positive 12, so x is greater than or equal to 12 on my number line. I can put my 12, I need a test value on each side, so I'll put a 0 and we'll just put a 15. So 0 is greater than or equal to 12, that is not true. 15 is greater than 12, that is true, and because I have an equal sign, so can be greater than or equal to, so I'll have a closed circle, and then I'm going to shade to the right, and that will give me the answer to number 16. And in case you were wondering, I actually did write that inside of my shoe. Good luck, and we'll see you Monday when we take our test.